please type your name, affiliation, and your country of residence in the chat room so that other participants can know who's present. For speakers, please kindly mute your mic, turn off your camera, except when you are speaking. Use the chat room to share and exchange ideas. There is a button below. It's a chat room. Please use it to share and exchange your ideas. And please post question in the Q&A feature. There is a button below. You can post any question. These will be responded to by the resource persons by the end of this session. And during Q&A session, you can also raise your hand and ask question. The webinar is being live cast and being recorded. So please be courteous and objective, and please, of course, not offensive. Thank you very much. We will start our session after 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Dr. Mudassir, can I just try my audio again? I changed the mic and I want to make sure it works. Can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Abu Bakr, I can hear you very well. Thank you very much. Thank you. We will start our session after 1 minute. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to this session about climate services for infrastructure investment under the climate change for adaptation theme. And this is, of course, under the 6th Nile Basin Development Forum. I would like to start quickly with some housekeeping, please. Can you kindly type your name, affiliation, and country of residence in the chat room so other participants can know who's present? And for our speakers and panelists, please kindly mute your mic and turn off your camera except when you are speaking. For our participants, please kindly use the chat room to share and exchange your ideas. And also you can post questions in Q&A feature. There is a button below. It's called Q&A. This will be responded to by the resource person. Webinar is being live cast and being recorded, so please be courteous and objective and not offensive. And now, on behalf of our executive director, I'm opening this session. Our Professor Saifuddin Hamad delegated me to open this session on his behalf. So I would like to open this session now, please. The Nile Basin Initiative, in collaboration with the government of Ethiopia, is organizing a series of webinars in the 6th Nile Basin Development Forum under the theme, Rethinking Regional Investment in the Nile Basin. The Science Policy Practice Dialogue is organized to bring together NBI with its stakeholders from Nile Basin countries and also around the world. The goal of this 6th Nile Basin Development Forum is to enhance transformation processes in projects that will be contributed to Nile Basin Initiative shared vision, which is to achieve sustainable socioeconomic development through the equitable utilization of the benefit from a common Nile Basin water resources. The themes in this 6th Nile Basin Development Forum, there are water resources management, environment and wetlands, water energy food nexus, adaptation to climate change, transboundary water governance. The Nile Basin is one of the most critical transboundary water basin in Africa, with the River Nile playing a crucial role and resource for most of the economic and social activities for the countries in the Eastern and North Africa. That said, it's equally facing adverse effect of climate change, which is expected to worsen in the future, should little or no effect be done to avert the current trends. The climate is changing, putting a range of natural and human systems at a risk and promoting communities, governments, and organizations to step up their effort to adapt. Investment in infrastructure resilience is socioeconomically worthwhile. Infrastructure investment need to take increased climate risk into consideration in the planning stage, and also local communities should be included in the planning stage. So welcome to this webinar. Let us have a fruitful presentations and discussion, and let us work together to incorporate these findings in our decision-making River Basin agenda. Thank you. I have with me Dr. Nicholas from the GIZ. He is also co-hosting this session with me. So we will be together in this session.
Hello, good afternoon to everybody. As Mudathir said, my name is Niklas Baumat. I'm working for GIZ as an advisor on the climate service for infrastructure investment project that is heavily working together with the NBI on this topic since 4 years. And I'm very glad to welcome all of you to this webinar, which particularly is showcasing what the NBI has worked on so far on becoming a climate service provider in the region for Nile Basin countries. Thank you and welcome once more.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nicholas. Now I would like please to share with you some keynotes before we start our presentations by our panelists. Thank you everyone. Yes. So the Nile Basin water use are facing many challenges related to climate change. So there are challenges related to food security. Of course, there are also challenges related to electrification, and also we need to build some kind of flood resilience. The NBI framework for climate, this is the framework. It has different important component here. Of course, there is a strong need for some observation and monitoring, and we need some kind of modeling and prediction. And then after that, there is this part of climate services information platform. And then, of course, we need to customize these climate information products to our stakeholders. So there are these 4 important components related to climate services information system. And before that, we need observation and monitoring. And then, of course, there is a part of research, modeling, and prediction. And finally, we need like a kind sometimes of user interface to present these results. Here, the NBI as a climate service providers for the Nile Basin countries, we work as intermediates here. We are trying to get like some external data from different open sources or from the countries. And then here we do like several processing for this information to generate knowledge to help the community at like level users and also the national level users. The scope of climate services product, it has like different category. One of them, we may need only sometimes to for the climate data to do some kind of tailoring and provide this information to our hydrologists here in the Nile Basin. Sometimes after tailoring, we may need to do like some kind of modeling by using, for example, the Nile DSS. And then after that, tailor this information for some kind of risk management. Sometimes even after tailoring this information, we need to do like some kind of risk assessment as we are doing here in this project to provide the infrastructure owners with some valuable information. So this is like the cycle for the climate services. It has these 4 important components and they feed each other. We have the climate proofing guideline, and one of our panelists will talk about that. We have also self-spaced e-learning, and we will talk also in details about that. And we will talk also about how we customize like some climate information. And of course, at the end, the community of practice to complete this important circle. The objective of this webinar is to showcasing what NBI has developed in the past 3 years to come up with the Climate Service Hub, and also to demonstrate NBI's increasing role as a climate service provider here for the region, and to demonstrate how climate resilient infrastructure project can be developed and supported, and also from a community of practice for climate proofing of infrastructure investment, how like invite a participant to become a member to the COP and register with the Climate Service Hub. And during the next 6 months, a series of training will be carried out on board on the hub. And also the session is a sort of kickoff to promote NBI sold and new services. Thank you very much. Back to you, Nicholas.
Yes, thank you very much, Mudathir, for your keynote speech. I would like now maybe to lead over also to what is coming next in the seminar today. I hope you can see my screen already. If it's there, maybe you can give me your feedback. So the program of today was, of course, until now, the introduction that we had, but we will be having 2 major blocks of presentations. The first block is focusing very much on climate services delivered and developed in the NBI context, but also in the regional context, by having a speech from the IPAC representative, but also from Daniel Oponia about the climate services that we have developed, and a climate service action plan that we have developed, and the workflow that is established or to be established at the NBI. And the second block is focusing very much on climate services for infrastructure investments. So there we will present the guideline for infrastructure investments to climate-proof these investments. This is presented by Emmanuel Junju from SWECO. He was joining in the past 3 years the process of this guideline development. Then we will be showcasing how we elaborated or piloted a risk assessment using the Borenga Dam case study, maybe very interesting insights into how risk assessments are carried out, what time and resources they consume, and how they can, and to discuss also how they can be integrated furthermore into project development, for instance, and also looking and also for upgrading existing infrastructure that is susceptible to climate change. And finally, as also Mudathir was showing, the circle of the climate service hub to be established at the NBI website. Of course, we would like to show you what are the future opportunities to learn more about climate proofing of infrastructure assessments, investments. How can we build up a community of practice that can learn from e-learning, that can learn from the guideline that will be online, and so on. And at the end, of course, we would like to have a facilitated discussion. We will ask key questions to the panelists, but also, of course, to those who are here invited today to be a guest. So now maybe I would just lead over to the next presentation. I think I see there the block is, what you see in the presentation is wrong actually for the block 1. But I would like now to give the floor to, it's Daniel Oponia to talk about the climate service catalog that we developed in the NBI, the climate service action plan, and the workflow manual. Please, Daniel Oponia, you might introduce yourself. You're a consultant to the NBI GIZ project, but please have a word on yourself also before you start. Thank you so much. And let's try to keep the 10 minutes that we have allocated so that we have sufficient time for discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nicholas. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Daniel Oponia, has been introduced, an engineer by training and profession. Right now I'm consulting for the Nile Basin GIZ project on climate services for infrastructure. With that, I would like to go straight into my presentation, but I think currently I may not be able to share my screen because there's still somebody's
please, Nicholas, can you stop sharing? Thank you.
Okay. So what you see here, like I already introduced myself, but I'll go straight into the presentation. Did Nicholas take away the... Well, what is the motivation for climate services at the NBI? As provided, it's stated that NBI wants to improve climate services by providing climate information in a way that assists decision makers, that is individuals and organizations, so that they can make better decisions. And another motivation to the point is that climate service requires appropriate engagement with an effective access mechanism and must respond to user needs. And as such, the Nile Basin, with support from GIZ, has come up with the Climate Service Catalogue, the Strategic Action Plan, and the Workflow Manual, which I'll get right into. What is the Climate Service Catalogue? Basically, it's climate products and services organized in a systematic and centralized form for easy reference. What you also have is we want to provide data and information portal to the public to be easily accessible and for persons to analyze observations. But also equally dissemination of education, training and capacity development within the Nile Basin. So these are broadly what the Climate Service Catalogue touches into. And as you can see, until now, there are 13 products and services. So what is the Climate Service Action Plan? So basically, we want to implement the climate service catalog in a way where we identify strategic activities meant to improve what already exists by access to the end user and complete or develop areas that end users will relay upon onto us. What you can see is at the moment, this climate service action plan applies across the technical, service, institutional dimensions of climate service while maintaining relevance to each of the product and services. Also, we look into the management, quality control, analysis of data and information, leading to improved forecast and prediction for better decisions. So basically, I am going to go into both a combination of the climate service catalog and the action plan so that we can see the interface between the two. The strategic action plan, we are looking at a time frame of 0 to 3 years, 4 to 6 years, and 7 to 10 years. So one of the products that you can see from the climate service catalog is the Nile Basin Regional Hydrological Monitoring Network. That is to my left. Then you can see the Basin, the Nile Basin Hydrometeorological data series. So basically, how does this then relate to the action plan? So we're looking at strengthening cooperation frameworks and agreements with other national hydrological meteorological services within the NBI countries on data sharing, equipment installation, and operation. We're also looking at how to optimize the full functionality of hydrological monitoring systems by ensuring that the network meets the required, for example, density and operational standards. The other products, part of the climate change action plan also looks at to increase the reliability and performance of data within the Nile Basin and the hydrological monitoring systems, but also how to enhance the processing of this data into information. We are also looking at the first two products, as you did see, increased data sources and quality of use to information validation from the products. The second array of products that you see is the Nile Basin Hydrological Bulletin. And then you also see the climate change scenario for the Nile Basin. You also do see the hydrological scenarios for the Nile Basin and the flood early warning for the Eastern Nile. So basically, these are regarded as the product model. That means not only are they at the catalog level to be used for their own sake, but they do add value to others. And that's the broad purpose for this level of products. Also included, you can see the Nile Basin river flow forecasting system, the drought forecasting system. So what is the strategic action plan related to these products? So we intend to optimize the full use and possibilities of a wide range of these products, understanding their current use, but also widening their scope. Also within the action plan, increase reliability and performance of the information derived from these products while widening their scope to get user problem related climate information for specific user groups. We are also looking into increasing reliability of this information or the source of this information by testing their performance. That is, what is the current forecast or prediction vis-a-vis what is observed? This helps improve the quality of performance. Then we're also looking at to increase the specific application and customization of these products to different user groups and locations. Improve on customized, tailor-made information for other specific applications and also multi-purpose use. So within what we call the service model, this is basically products or services that that address usability for specific purposes or to specific models. And the products that we have right now is the Climate Proofing Guidance Hub for infrastructure and basin planning. We have the Nile Basin Decision Support Tool, and we also have the Climate Service Portal. So also included, we have the policymakers and technical expert awareness and awareness raising products. We also have capacity building products. So what is the strategic climate service action plan related to these products? So one of them is increase specific application of products to different user groups and locations, improve on customized, how to customize these products to, again, specific applications and multi-purpose use, provide justification for application of each of these products to different user groups and locations. Also, in continuation, we intend to discover new products for uptake into the climate service catalog, improve the use, transfer, and capacity of Nile Basin within the Nile Basin, develop workflow for customized climate service, support the dissemination, education, training, and capacity development using these products, recommend specific measures that support making products used and available to different NBI stakeholders, enhance the use and extension of these products into other sectors or other use platforms like social media, presence at different regional and international events. We are glad to have ICPAC present. There's also other different regional forums that we intend to be present. Also establish a basis for developing actionable items for institutional workflows. And we are going to look at this in the next slide, which is the Climate Service Workflow Manual. So basically, what is the Climate Service Action Manual? Let's give an example. You can go into Google and make a search. Once you make a search, you come.
Hello, sorry. Daniel, are you still there? Hello, Daniel. I think our colleague Daniel, the panelist who's presenting this presentation about NBI climate services, and he was talking about the climate services catalog, which was developed by the NBI, and also the climate services strategic action plan, and also he was explaining the workflow manual. Daniel, are you back? Daniel? Okay, so I think we can go to the next presenter now. That is fine. So thank you very much. Daniel Oponia, for this excellent presentation. And now we are going to go to Dr. Abu Bakr from ICPAC, and his presentation is about ICPAC's Climate Services Program for Eastern Africa. Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Dr. Abu Bakr.
Yes, thank you very much, Mudassir. Okay, my name is Abu Bakr Saleh Babikr. I am a climate scientist by training, and I have been working recently in the area of climate information and climate services at the IGAD Climate Prediction and Application Center based in Nairobi, Kenya. I will be talking to you today about climate services for different socio-economical sectors. So I will just give a glimpse about the climate services that we provide at ICPAC and how these information are from the process from information to services and advisories to the users. And then I will show you just a bit of our dissemination channels. So okay, ICPAC is a regional climate center, and it was established in 1988 as a drought monitoring center following the famous drought in the mid of the 80s of the last century. It is a regional climate, one of the regional climate of the World Meteorological Organization. We at ICPAC work in collaboration with a vast number of international partners, including EU MidSat, UK Med Office, IRA of Columbia University. Recently, we engaged with ECMWF. And our main goal and our main mission is to provide climate services to 11 East African countries that are IGAD countries. Those are 8 countries. And then beside those IGAD countries, we have Burundi, Tanzania, and Rwanda. And as you can see, geographically, there's a huge overlap between us at ICPAC and between Nile Basin Initiative. And we are really happy to establish this collaboration, and maybe we work on it to foster it further. So as my predecessor, the speaker before me, mentioned about climate services, that according to the global framework of climate services is that climate services is to provide or to generate information that can help individuals and organizations to take smart decisions. And it is one step further from climate information. So for example, recently there's a lot of demand, not only just to provide climate information, but rather to give more of advisories generated based on this information. So the users are not satisfied with only what the weather will be, for example, but they want to know what the weather will do. So this is the area we are working on. Climate information, our climate services generally has to be co-produced. So the user has to be engaged in the production process to identify the user's need. It also has to be iterated, so to improve on it every time. And it has to be disseminated in a timely fashion, so to help with the early action and preparedness. So our main services at ICPAC, we have services in the area of climate information and climate forecasting. And we have services in the area of disaster risk management. And then we have services in the area of water and hydrology. And we share this information. Of course, we have a sector of climate dissemination of climate information. We have also teamwork on agriculture and food security, environmental monitoring. We provide capacity building to national med services. And of course, we have some work in the area of climate change. So our main work, for example, is on weather and climate forecasting, hydrological forecasting, and disaster risk reduction. So these are the main areas that encompass our activities. So in the area of weather forecast, for example, we provide a weekly forecast from a regional weather forecast model, the weather research and forecasting model work. We use it and we run it over the whole region. And from that, we provide a weekly forecast, for example, for rainfall and temperature. From the rainfall forecast, we also derive another product, which is what we call exceptional rainfall event. These are the analysis for the forecasted rainfall compared to the long-term climatology. For example, the rainfall that is expected to exceed 99 percentile or 95 percentile or 90 percentile, we consider those a risk for the region, and we analyze and we give advisories according to that. We also share the forecast, for example, from the numerical model with a team that works with Earth observation to generate a projection or a forecast for the desert locust movement. This is a product we developed recently due to the infestation of the desert locust for the region in the past years. So countries, most of our countries, Kenya, Ethiopia, Somalia, and Djibouti, all are affected by desert locust. So this is a new product which depends on the weather forecast, for example, for rainfall, for temperature, for wind at different level, beside information of the ecological condition. And we also carry out some analysis for the monitoring for the climate, especially rainfall over the region. And that is a product result from the observation on the ground and satellite observation. So we merge this information together to generate what you call it like an interpolation for the rainfall over the region to monitor the rainfall condition over the region. So this product is also generated at a different time scale. For example, we generate for the whole season. For example, March, May, April in the far right of the map, as you can see here. We generate it also for the months in a monthly scale. For example, this is the map in the middle. It is for February. And the far left here, this is the same product for 10 days analysis. So in this way, we have ability to monitor the situation of rainfall over the region on different time scales. And we also analyze it compared to the long-term mean. So for example, what you are seeing, the colors here, the yellow color shows the areas that are drier than normal, and the green shows the areas that are wetter than normal. Dark green shows the areas that are much wetter than normal. So this kind of comparison between the recent condition and the long-term mean, it will give us ability to monitor and advise according to the situation over the region. With this information, for example, for the climate monitoring, we generate a crop monitoring product that also analyze the situation of the crop over the region and give it in a color-coded scheme. For example, areas that are yellow here, those are the areas that are under watch. Areas that are green, those are areas that are favorable, or the climate condition or the crop condition are favorable for production. And if the situation is bad, then you will see a red and a bit of brown color, indicating the danger or the risk for the crop in the region. And with those all information, we also generate a seasonal forecast for the whole region. That is 3 times a year. This is our seasonal forecast, and it comes in terms of probabilistic forecast. So this is I think for the last year, June to September season. And as you can see, the areas that are green, so the different varieties of green, those are the areas that are expected to receive above normal rainfall. So rainfall, when you compare it to the long-term climatology, you find that the expected rainfall amount is above the long-term climatology, and that we consider it areas that are will receive above normal rainfall. The areas that are yellow here, those are the areas that are expected to receive rainfall below the normal rainfall. And from this product, from the seasonal forecast in its current format, in the what we call probabilistic forecast, we move on to organize, for example, what we call Climate Outlook Forum. The Climate Outlook Forum actually bring together the climate scientists, the forecasters, seasonal forecasters from the ICPAC and from the National Meteorological Services, together with the focal persons from different socio-economical sectors. That is why this is our key product, and that is why I title my presentation as climate services for different socio-economical sectors. So we sit together with those focal persons from the national member state of the ICPAC, and we share with them the forecast, and then we share with them we analyze all of us together, the climate forecasters and the expert in different regions, for example, different areas, for example, expert on disaster risk management, expert on agriculture and food security, water and energy, livestock and rangeland and health. And of course, also the conflict sector. So those are the major sectors that we consider. And then we discuss, for example, for each zone or for each country, what is the forecast for the country and what is the implication of this forecast for the disaster risk management, for example, for agriculture and food security, for water and energy. We analyze the potential impact. We also suggest what are the best mitigation measures that we could provide to countries and decision makers to mitigate the potential impact of the forecast. So all this information together, we put them for 11 countries of ICPAC in one document. We call it a summary for decision makers. Later on, I will share on the chat, I'll share an example or a link for the most recent summary for decision makers. And all this information, and then we share together with the people who are on our mailing list. We use different channels to disseminate climate information and weather. For example, we use Facebook, and currently we have about 100,000 people who are what we call them users, or people who interact with our product. And then on Twitter, we have about 8,000. And then we have a mailing list through which we share also our product, and those about 6,000 people. And our website also has very frequent number of visitors. In the last 6 months, we have about 85,000 people who visited our website. So in summary, I would say that ICPAC generates weather and climate information at different time scales, from weekly, monthly, and seasonal. Weather and climate information are analyzed depending on the context, and depend on this analysis we provide advisories. And ICPAC uses a range of multi-channels to disseminate this climate information with the users. Thank you very much for your time, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abu Bakr from ICPAC. And thank you for the presentation, and you presented very well the ICPAC's Climate Services Program for the Eastern Africa, and you also explained your services and your forums and how you disseminate your information. Thank you very much for sharing this information. Please stay with us. At the end, you will receive some questions from our participants. And also you may have, if we have enough time, you may also have a time to reflect also. I just would like to share some housekeeping with our participant here. Please type your name, affiliation, and country of residence in the chat room so that other participants can know who's present. And for our speakers or panelists, please kindly mute your mic and turn off your camera except when you are speaking. And please use the chat room to share and exchange ideas. And for our participant also, please post your question in Q&A feature. There will be responded to by a resource person. And also the webinar is being live cast, so kindly everything is recorded, and please be courteous. Thank you very much. I think our colleague, maybe Dr. Abu Bakr, you can switch off your video now. Thank you very much. And Daniel, you can wrap up quickly your presentation if you are there. I can see you are back. Yes, you can wrap up maybe quickly your presentation. Thank you. Daniel, are you there? Yes, no problem. I think, okay, Daniel, you are
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Yes,
yes.
Thank you for having me. I think what we just experienced is the power or the challenges that can happen with poor weather. Like I did in my conclusion, you can see that one of the other products we developed was the Climate Service Workflow Manual. So basically the workflow manual, like I did indicate, or if you missed, we have 4 levels. The first level is you access a product. Then we segregate you, whether you are an internal user or an external user. And then the help desk or the climate service expert will help profile whether you're an internal user or an external user, the costs, the availability, the time of your request, the schedule, your needs. Then the third level is we will indicate which products are open source, readily available, or what needs to be customized for the end user. And at the 4th level, we give you feedback. Is it available or not? And then as at the NBI, there needs to be internal evaluation to improve services. So in conclusion, we want to put across to the Nile Basin initiative that these climate services need to be expanded beyond the current 13 to address the different challenges. Also, we need to operationalize the strategic action plan to different action areas, break down, for example, information and awareness products. You need to digitalize them. We had the gentleman from ICPAC telling us about the locust prediction. I'm aware of a company called Climacell that is using disruptive technology, that is the power of cellular towers to actually predict weather and climate. So that is the power of disruptive technology, and how do we incorporate that into the actionable plans. And lastly, we need to institutionalize the workflow manual so that we can customize service delivery. That could be either a help desk or recruit a climate service expert, or basically expand an existing role to incorporate climate services as part of the terms of reference. With that, thank you so much for having me back. Mudathi, I would like to return back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel and Dr. Abubakar. Before we go to our next block, maybe there are 2 questions for you here. I will start with you, Daniel. There is 1 question. Okay. Can you please elaborate more, maybe on the advantage of the plan to make these services online, like these climate services catalog, action plan, and this workflow manual? What is there any advantage of making these services online? Can you answer that question, please?
Yes, Mudathi, thank you for the question. As we know, information is power. And right now, disruptive technology like social media can actually help us reach a lot more people. And that, I think, is the primary purpose of putting all this information on social media or in a digital form, so that it can be easily accessible by more people. Like I did say, society is moving onto Facebook, society is moving onto Uber, society is moving into different digital forums for us, so that people can reach this information a lot easier. So I think it would make a lot of sense for the NBI to actually put some of these products online so that they can be easily accessible. For example, I mean, if somebody is Google searching for let's say weather forecasts or drought forecasting for his region and location, gladly enough, if that product is available and it's online, they can easily access this. With that, Mudathi, I would like to return back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel. 1 question for you, Dr. Abubakar. There is 1 question. What are the challenges for communicating your climate services? You are communicating a lot of climate services for the IGAD region. What are the challenges for communicating your services? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. And it's really a good question about communicating what are the challenges. Because whatever we produce, we really have very good quality of product. But the challenge is how to reach the end user. And one of the issues with the end users, as was Daniel saying, we've been using the social media, and we have managed to really reach a wide number of users on the social media, as from the numbers that I have shared. About 100,000 on Facebook, 600 or 800,000 on Twitter, and 6,000 on the mailing list. But the issue with climate services and user is that they are diverse. And some of them you are able to reach them through social media. Others, for example, in the rural areas might not have the privilege of a stable internet connection or a smartphone through which they can access climate information. And those are the most vulnerable people, actually. And those are the more people that we supposed to reach. But the challenge is that we do not have the mean at the moment to reach them. One of the best way to reach the people in the rural area is the radios. And we are trying our best to engage in partnership, for example, with national radios or to create partnership between the national med services and the private sector and the media in a way that enable us to in this collaboration to reach the people in the rural areas who are the most vulnerable to climate extremes and climate variability. So major challenge is this one. We are also working on area of partnership with the media, with the journalists, for example, and we have a project that will develop a course to train journalists in reporting climate information, climate change. So the hope is that we try to mainstream climate information into the traditional media so they can be the messenger who carry climate information further and cascade it down to the end users. So these are the main challenges, and this is how we think we can approach them. But we are very open for collaboration, for new ideas on how to reach the last mile and the end user.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abu Bakr, and thank you very much, Daniel. And now we are going to start the second part of our session. But before we go there, allow me please to welcome Madam Jacqueline, the TAC of Rwanda and the Nile TAC Chair. I would like also to welcome Azab, our water resources expert from Intro, and also to welcome Dr. Maha, our groundwater expert. I would like also to welcome Dr. Juan Carlos from the GIZ. Thank you all for joining our session. And now I'm going to the second part of this session. It is about climate services for infrastructure investment. And now here we are going to see examples and lessons learned from the NBI GIZ cooperation. So I would like please to start with Mats, and from Stockholm International Water Institute, SUI. And his presentation is about climate, infrastructure, and human security. Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Mats. Please kindly introduce yourself first, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Morati. Thank you for having me in this interesting webinar. I'd like to share some eye-opening examples of the linkages between infrastructure, climate risk, and human security from Asia. But before that, I would also say that at CV, where I'm working at the Transboundary Water Corporation, we also have a UNESCO Category 2 center, which is labeled the International Center for Water Cooperation. And we do have quite a few activities, both in Asia and in Africa, particularly in the Nile Basin. So in my presentation, let's see if I can get this working. Yes, I will start with some key messages because I know that the time is short, and often if you're running out of time, this is what you miss out. In talking about the linkages between climate and climate impact on infrastructure, there are studies showing that the increased resilience is very much needed in terms of when both planning and looking at the existing infrastructure. And there are studies, particularly from the World Bank, for instance, that show that this is really worthwhile to carry out this kind of improvement. It's economically feasible and viable. Second key message is that when planning is happening, there's an increasing need to look into the existing side of the infrastructure investment to take the climate risk into consideration. There are plenty of examples showing that this is not really happening all the time. Shortcuts are made when in planning and implementation stage of various types of infrastructure. Third key message, another thing which is overlooked is to actually consult the local people, the local communities who do actually have a lot of knowledge and important experience from the local conditions where a certain infrastructure is being planned and implemented. Fourth, something which is being recognized more and more is that there are profound linkages between climate-driven hazards, open water hazards such as floods and droughts, and the security of human populations in various aspects. And fifth key message, finally, when doing the planning, there's also an increased interest and increased understanding of how nature can actually provide the solutions for increased resilience. So take nature-based solutions into consideration is increasingly important. Now I will actually provide meat to those bones and give some examples on how this can look like. But what's happening in the world now, of course, population is increasing drastically, and the demand for water, energy, and food is also thereby increasing drastically. So there's a great need to improve and build more infrastructure in terms of roads, hydropower stations, windmills, etc. And the need is, of course, very, very high in the low and middle income countries. So my first example is coming from a terrible event that happened just a few weeks ago in the state of Uttarakhand in India. It's where a big block of rock fell off of a mountain side and brought with it a big part of a glacier, and it turned into a very destructive debris flow, and it demolished not more than 2 hydropower stations. Unfortunately, there was a big loss of lives and livelihoods, and also big economic loss, expected to have maybe more than $200 million direct loss in these hydropower stations. And then, of course, if you calculate the loss in the hydropower that cannot be produced now, there's an additional expected or anticipated $250 million loss from the loss of power production. And the reason for having quite a lot of people lost is that one of these hydropower stations was already under construction. So there were a lot of workers being actually more or less washed away in this debris flow. So this shows that there's actually, well, there's an overlooking in doing these kind of predictions. The need for climate risk is not taken into account. These hydropower stations in India were built in fairly vulnerable positions in the landscape, so that needs to be taken into account. If you calculate this in a world scale, a fairly recent report from the World Bank shows that there's a big loss annually due to this kind of natural disasters, $18 billion, particularly in low and middle income countries. There's also knock-on effects on the loss of sort of economic activities. When roads are destructed, then transport cannot happen to markets, loss of hydropower production, etc. So this is really something that is hitting hard on the society. And it's also been calculated that for each US dollar spent, there's a benefit of $4 as a return. So this is something that should be taken on board. So that was my key message number one. Look into the economics of building resilience. It's worthwhile before the disaster happens. Second example, looking into the position of landscapes when you build things, when you build infrastructure. Here's a mountain side in northwest Pakistan, close to the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And you look at the water catchment in a fairly dry climate, but where rainfall is happening through often very, very intense rainfall events with high magnitude showers. And if this happens in this position, you will have more or less like a funnel of water coming out of the mountainside. And you can see on the alluvial fan that there are actually no vegetation or very little vegetation in the upper part. And there's a reason for this, because when the rain is heavy, it will come out as a flash flood and destroy vegetation and also bring a lot of boulders. This is where we've seen that schools are being built, which is very surprising because it's a very vulnerable spot. And why would you risk to put your children in a site like this? Looking closer, it can look like this. This is actually a school which was not long ago destroyed by one of these flash floods. Pulling down rocks and water from the hillside, destroying everything. Luckily, there was no kids in school because it happened at night. But reconstruction have then happened in the same position. And of course, it's a bit tricky to understand. And I think there are a number of reasons which needs to be looked into. There are political reasons. There's the access to land. Maybe all the land is already taken and owned and used by people, so there's no finance to actually get new land for new schools. And there might be traditional reasons which needs a bit thorough studies to understand. So here there's really a need for science policy dialogues, very much needed to understand what is the science behind a certain site, a certain climate, and how is this going to be useful for policy and decision making when decision is taken where to put infrastructure. So that was my key message number two. Always look into the local conditions and try to understand the situation as much as possible, both from a natural side and also socioeconomic side. Third example, from the same region in northwest Pakistan, another infrastructure investment, a road and a tunnel being built by a construction company that has been hired in a procurement process which is coming from the outside. They don't know the region, they don't know the local conditions, and they're experts, of course, in putting concrete in place, but don't know much about the local conditions. So therefore, important to consult with the locals. The man in the white clothes here is the local community leader, informing the engineers about local conditions, but in vain, because they did not listen to the advice. The advice was where to put constructions, where to put the equipment, where to put the houses for the local workers and so on. And the result was that actually they lost both lives and construction material. So look into the knowledge of the local people and the community is very important and often overlooked. Fourth message, and this is very disturbing. Whenever these kind of disasters happen, most vulnerable people are often women and elderly and young people and so on. This is a group of people which lost everything in a flash flood, again, still in the northwest Pakistan. Then, of course, a series of problems is occurring. The infrastructure is damaged, the houses are gone, the roads are gone, the livelihood opportunities are gone because agricultural land is washed away. People are displaced, they have to find new places to live. And in fact, they become climate refugees, often internal climate refugees within the country. But also when you're in an area like in northwest Pakistan on the border to Afghanistan, this is also where terror organizations are operating and also have their recruitment activities. So if you're a single man and you lost everything, it's common that you are the target for these terror organizations to get more people on board. So this is the linkages to the human security side, which is well, the understanding of this is increasing day by day, I would say. Another part in the Himalayan region, Nepal, there are other types of human security when a disaster happens. There was a study following the earthquake that happened in Nepal in 2015, two extremely high magnitude earthquakes, more than 7 on the Richter scale, destroyed a lot of houses, livelihoods, and 9,000 people died, etc. And it's been shown that this kind of vulnerability that also increased the number of girls, women, and young boys being trafficked outside the country to Asia, but even some of them end up even in networks in Africa. This is another terrible knock-on effects when disasters strike. And of course, we have this kind of terror organizations operating both in Asia and in Africa. So we should be fully aware of these kind of linkages. That was my message number 4. So finally, message number 5, an example then from Koshi Basin, which is part of Ganges Basin, where the Koshi is flowing from Tibetan Plateau through Nepal down to the lowlands in Bihar in India. And this is a river which carry a lot of sediments, and when a lot of sediment is carried by a river down to the lowland, it will be deposited. And the way that the river naturally works is that it changes its flow from time to time to evenly distribute these sediments. This also provides a very, very fertile environment for agriculture. But when people start to put infrastructure, they confine the river to a certain place, and that means that the river will deposit sediments on one spot all the time, and it keeps raising the level of the river above the surroundings. So eventually, it's like having a river flowing on top of a railway embankment. Now, this river broke through these kind of embankments, which has been then stabilized or maintained by the society and confining the river to a certain spot. And when it breaks through, it takes a new path. It actually follows an old path and then creates huge problems of floodings in a very wide area. And this is an area where you have a very large population. So big destruction is taking place. And this happened in 2008, but it has happened 8 times since the 50s. And in the 50s, that's when engineers started to confine the river into a certain spot. And this, of course, creates also a lot of death, destruction, and displacement of people. So I would like to quote from yesterday. We know that this year's Stockholm Water Prize laureate is Sandra Postel from US, and she's been working quite a lot on these kind of linkages between what nature is doing and can do, and the impact on people and so on. she's an author of many books, and one of her quotes it fits very well with what this example I just provided, that work with nature, not against it. In this case, when you deal with rivers, don't try to confine them to a certain spot, but make room for the river. That's also something that is going on in Europe, for instance, to reconnect rivers to the floodplains in order to make sure that there's the room for excess water. So that's one of the nature-based solutions that we should be working more with. And that was my fifth key message. Now, I took examples from Asia because they're I find them quite eye-opening, and you can learn a lot from them. But of course, you can apply all these things to the Nile Basin. And last year and the year before, there were terrible floods striking particularly hard in Sudan and South Sudan, and a lot of people being displaced, lost livelihoods, and so on. And with the kind of climate services that's being presented at this webinar, mapping vulnerable areas, risk areas for floods, and so on, this should actually be very useful to help planning decision makers to take wise decisions on where to invest in infrastructure, and actually maybe also look at the existing infrastructure and safeguard them even better. So now you've seen my key messages and you've seen some examples for them. Well, thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this excellent presentation. And thank you very much for sharing with us this international experience and these messages for our region here. And thank you also for presenting this relation of infrastructure, climate risk, and human security. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please stay with us. You may receive some question at the end. Thank you. Now we will go to the next presenter, Dr. Emmanuel Junju from SUECO. He will present to us the guideline for practitioners on climate proofing of infrastructure investments. Thank you very much. Please, Emmanuel, introduce yourself first, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you put the slide in the slideshow mode?
Yeah, just
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. My name is Emmanuel Junju. I am currently working for SUECO Norway. I have been involved with GIZ and Nile Basin in the development of the ongoing development of the climate proofing guideline for water-related infrastructure. I'm an engineer by training, and I have also worked a little bit with research on hydropower and climate change, focusing on East Africa. I currently work mostly with dams and hydropower in SUECO in Trondheim in Norway. So I'm just briefly in the next 10 minutes just going to present a little bit of what we have been doing and talk a little bit about the climate proofing guideline for water-related infrastructure for the Nile Basin. So I don't know. Can you see my? Okay, yeah. So
yes.
The previous presenter has talked a lot about vulnerability, and so I will not dwell so much on that. But this is something maybe I have to talk about it in relation to climate change, because already today we see that if you have not taken into consideration a number of factors when you do your designs for water infrastructure, then you're going to probably suffer from problems coming from natural disasters. And then we know that under climate change, in some cases, some of these disasters may actually multiply because in many places, we expect more floods, we expect more challenges to the structures. So dam breaks and all these kind of issues that we deal with today will continue in the future, of course, if we do not have sufficient adaptation to prevent these kind of problems, erosion, both of existing materials and also channels that are built for irrigation. But it's not only on the increasing water resources that we're talking about, but there will also be issues to do with drought and having our infrastructure underperforming and therefore not being able to meet the services that we're trying to provide. And here we're talking about food security, electrification, and of course, flood control, amongst so many other services. So when we talk about climate proofing, we are basically trying to see how do we manage to make the infrastructure continue to give us the services that we need in a reliable way in the future, and how do we also keep the infrastructure safe so that the disasters that the previous presenter has talked about are mitigated. So in developing this guideline, the guideline that we have developed has a number of sections, and in developing it, we have literally gone through, we have reviewed a number of existing guidelines. We've had discussions at the local level, and I think the development is kind of really advanced, but it's probably not very complete as per now, but it's tending towards the kind of, I could say, the final stages. So literally the document that we are providing has 4 sections. The first section is basically enumerating the problem, defining it, and documenting a little bit about the risks, for climate. I'm sorry I didn't put my video on. Now I hope you can see my face. Yeah, so we have the problem definition in the section 1, and we define the objectives, what we wanted, and I think the objectives are pretty clear in this case. Section 2 is more like a theoretical introduction to the framework and how we have thought. And in this case, we are basically approaching climate proofing from a risk management approach. And then in section 3, we have mainstreamed the different steps and the different approaches to the NBI project cycle. And then in section 4, we basically have some examples of structure and function adaptation options. And by structure, I mean things to do with the infrastructure itself, building, for example, larger spillways and things like that, different solutions to the technical problems, and all other kind of solutions that are functional that could be monitoring and so forth. And here we shall also have cases and a number of references to important sources of information. Literally, I mean, generally the scope of the objective, if I can just summarize, because I don't have a lot of time, is to enable the integration of climate change in planning, designing and operation of water infrastructure. And here we focus mostly on project level investments. We focus on both, as I've mentioned, services, the structure, and of course the environment is important. And the thing with the guideline is that it provides a generic approach for applying across countries. We are conversant with the fact that different countries may have different regulation, different rules, and different laws. So in developing this, we haven't taken into all that consideration or gone so much in detail about technical requirements from place to place, but we have generally written a very generic guideline. And we hope that this guideline can be flexible and updated with evolving experience, because as you know, this issue of climate proofing is pretty new in many areas, and so the experience will be gained with use, and there will be lots of lessons learned, and those will be shared, and will probably help us to improve the guideline. And the users, it's basically targeted towards owners, developers, and operators, and we also think that its day-to-day kind of operationalization will be by professionals carrying out planning, design, and of course operation. I said earlier that we're basically looking at it from a climate risk approach, and we are looking at having like an iterative kind of approach to looking at climate risk. And in this case, we have 4 major kind of steps. The first question is basically for each stage of a project to define what are the key questions, and then we'll carry out the risk assessment, and then find out how we're going to treat the risk or find the solutions to the identified problems, and of course find out if whatever risk treatment we have identified will actually be able to perform the job and eventually do a review continuously, so as to identify better ways to do it. Stakeholder involvement is going to be a very important part of this, because risk is not like, this is not a really exact science, because like, risk is basically a combination of how likely a particular event is going to occur, and the consequences that one might experience if that event occurs. And of course, the combination of that is what will give us risk. But whether someone decides to take a particular risk or find treatment for it or completely abandon the project depends on a number of factors. Of course, it might depend on how damaging the particular risk might be. It might depend on how costly the adaptation might be. It might and all the different alternatives. So it means that here we have lots of stakeholder investment, first of all, to define what kind of level of risk, be it economic or other, that they can take or not. And then a number of other factors to define what kind of threshold. Now, there's some thresholds that we have to, that are technical. For example, if a dam shouldn't break, and it's a technical threshold that, of course, you can fix based on technical guidelines, but then there will be thresholds on investment and on a lot of other things that a particular society can take. So involving the communities in determining these thresholds to decide whether a particular climate factor results into a risk that they should actually deal with, or whether they should just abandon the project or find alternatives is going to be very important. So one of the key overarching things that we're going to have in this climate proofing is that from the very early stages of a project, we have to establish what we call a risk and opportunity register. And in this one, what we're trying to do here is that for each and every risk or every possible opportunity, because climate change comes with both risks and opportunities. For example, you might have a situation where you have increasing amount of water, for example, which means probably for the sake of hydropower generation that you might have an opportunity to produce more electricity or to provide storage and probably have this in the dry season, but it also creates a risk. And the risk could be maybe the increased floods and the increased risk of maybe your dam breaking because the current design maybe does not satisfy, they will not be able to pass the floods as necessary. So all that, so it's important that we list down all the different climate stresses for a particular project, identify the threat, and then based on what is projected to happen within the lifetime of the project, try to work out what kind of risk level we have, and then based on this tabulation, the different stakeholders might be able to determine whether to go on with the project or to identify a different type of treatment for the risk. What we have done is that we, like I said earlier, is to mainstream this within the project cycle for the Nile Basin, which is basically similar to how many typical projects are developed. Most projects have a project identification stage, and for many water projects, or maybe hydropower or whatever it is, there will be probably even before you go into at the project's level, you have the policy side of things where you decide to solve a particular problem in a particular way. And we are saying that at each of these levels, you should be able to look into the climate aspects. Now, at the early stages, it might be that you do not have all the information you need for the project. You probably have a basic outline of how you want to do things. So the information needs at the beginning may not be as large as when you get into designing the detailed components. That is when you get more to the detailed design level, to the appraisal and all these different other steps that come afterward. But we are saying that this process of scoping and asking key questions about the project risk should be done at every level, right from planning of from project identification, from policies to project identification, to project preparation, to mobilizing of resources, so that at each of these stages, as you move, you have there and collect more and more information and know more about the project. You have an idea of how to go forward with this project and what treatments to make and what alternatives you can take forward. And the guideline is kind of has entry points for both new and existing projects. Currently, the test that we have is that we have all the challenge that we have is that most of the projects that we have been looking at are projects that are already existing, and then suddenly you have an investor asking, or an investor or a financing institution asking for a climate probably impact assessment to be done. And but we hope that in future, as one formulates a project from the word go, that climate becomes more and more something that you think about, and you do parallel with all the other things that happen in developing a project. While you do your feasibility studies, your environmental studies, you assess your resettlement studies, you're literally also looking at the climate impact, because in this way, because there are lots of feedbacks, and in this way you are able to come up with solutions that take into consideration all these issues. So I have talked about these stages: sector policy plans and project identification, project preparation, resource mobilization. Those are the key project stages that we have, and at each level consider climate change in the different, when you come up with the resource policies, infrastructure planning, consider climate change at project framing and selection of individual sites. For example, if you have a challenge of whether to choose one site over the other, think about what climate change might mean for one site relative to the other, and whether maybe choosing one site over the other one might actually have benefits. So things like that, either in terms of water supply, catchments, or in terms of risks, in terms of hazards. For example, we've just had that example with a large landslide that caused the flood. Look at the geotechnical aspects and try to think about whether climate becomes an additional factor in future. You're in the feasibility study, you have to do the same things at resource mobilization, because then you're dealing with risks of costing of the different risk treatments. How much does it mean? Would you go for a physical solution, or would you go for a different maybe solution that takes into consideration maybe avoid the project or find different ways to solve the same problem, or build the project in such a way that actually you still are able to manage the resource, and so forth and so on. So this is this kind of consideration should be at every stage of the projects. So you don't do it, or you don't wait for the project to be designed and then you start to consider climate. At each level, you go through these questions, you ask yourself the questions, you scope, you do the risk assessment, you do the risk treatment, and then you create a monitoring and evaluation plan to check whether the risk treatments that you have chosen are actually performing their role. So this is similar, like I said, for each and every process. So in the guideline, we have created, as I explained in section 3, stage by stage kind of guidance questions for each of these stages. And of course, that cannot be explained in 10 minutes. But for each stage, we talk about the technical or the decision-making context, and that is basically the engineering and all the other normal project activities that will be happening. And then we ask the key questions that you should be asking at the different stage, and then we lay out what you should be considering in the risk assessment, and what you should do for the risk treatment, and what you should be considering for the monitoring and evaluation. And we do that for both the identification in detail. We do that for preparation stage, where you have the field investigation, the feasibility studies. We also link that to the climate questions that you should be considering at that stage. And here we have also a special focus on stress testing, because in this, when you go in detail, when you start to think about the determining or designing your project, then there might be in some cases need for actually doing much more complicated analyses, where you might collect data you need to collect data from climate models, and run a number of scenarios, maybe that will look at production in the future, that will look at flood situation in the future, and then decide what kind of risk level a particular design might have, and then go on changing or finding the the optimal infrastructure solutions like spillways, like dam heights, different designs that give you a design that is actually able to meet the future challenges. But of course, there will always be the economic consideration. So it's not only meeting the future structure needs, but it's going to have to be a trade-off between what the demands of climate change put on the structure, but at the same time, the true economic impact of that and what the stakeholders, the owners, can actually afford to do. So it's going to be a bit of a trade-off in these things. And many times you may not be able to solve this with only the structural solutions, but you may have to look into other kind of solutions. So I will skip through this quickly because this is more a repetition of what I have said, that for if you'd have to go into the document to try and understand what we are doing at each level, what are the key questions to ask, what data needs you need for the different stages, and how would you carry out the risk assessment, the risk treatment, and how would you choose the plan, or how would you prepare the plan to monitor whether what you're doing is right. Now, this work, as I have, and I must really say this over and over, it's not like a standalone job. This must be done together with all the project development activities, because it will eventually feed into how the project is designed, how you're going to resettle people, how you're going to solve the environmental challenges. If let's say you're dealing with minimum flow, how you're going to look at the different natural hazards affecting your project, both under today's climate and future climate. In some cases, you may end up doing maybe incremental solutions where you consider today's risk and then gradually try to make adjustments as you go ahead, or keep the climate risks in the background if the project is built, and see how you monitor and try to avoid problems that might come in the future. I've said so much, of course, about all this with my technical background, about the typical solutions from an engineering perspective, spillways, storage, for example, to deal with increasing droughts in the future, or maybe more efficient use of water, different types of technologies. For example, if it came to irrigation, maybe you decide to focus on a solution that provides a bit more effective use of water, so that you deal with droughts a little bit more. So these are the detailed technical considerations, but there will always be other kind of ecosystem-based adaptations where you probably just have to harness the benefits of biodiversity and ecosystem services so as to reduce the climate-related impact of water. So not everything will be solved basically by these gray solutions of building dams, increasing storages, but some of the issues might be actually looking into ways in which, into the ecosystem, and finding ways in which you can create better adaptation. Just a little bit more about the operationalization, because there's always this challenge that guidelines are created and then they gather dust on the shelves. The NBI is planning together with GIZ to integrate the whole guideline into a digital hub, and this will provide an opportunity for people to actually interact a little bit better with the guideline, but also provide information, or not information, but provide some kind of a feedback on what's working and what's not working, share experiences, share best practices, and provide also suggestions on what to make better. And the hub will also follow the same structure that I have shown, all the way from sector policy planning to project identification, clearly guiding you through the different questions that are to be taken into consideration, and then giving you a guidance on where to find what data to use, what analysis you should be using, and where you don't find the correct information, also be able to interact with a number of users so that you're able to ask questions. I think more questions about this might be answered by my colleague from GIZ. So briefly, within the 10 minutes I had, this is all I could say. I think I've gone a little bit over. I'm sorry for that. We can take any questions afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Junjo. Thank you for this nice presentation about the climate proofing guideline and you took us through different steps in this process. Thank you for elaborating very well. Although, as you said, the time was not enough, but at least you managed to highlight very well how we can go through this climate proofing guideline. Thank you. Please stay with us. We will have, you have already some questions on the chat. We will post them to you by the end of these presentations. Thank you. Now we will go to our next presenter, Sami Osman, our expert from NELSAP. He will present to us the application of the Climate Risk Assessment Protocol, this PIVC, and he will give us a case study of Boringa Dam. Please, Sami, introduce yourself first, and the floor is yours. Thank you, Sami. Sami? Yes.
Sorry,
you are muted. Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Sami Osman Al-Tom. I'm the Water Resources Engineer at NELSAP CU based in Kigali, Rwanda, one of the 2 subsidiary action programs of the NELSAP. Today, I'm going to talk about the application of the climate risk assessment of the protocol and just get you through one of the 2 case studies that we implemented, climate risk assessment, which is the as my colleague just explained earlier, that the climate is changing. This is a fact, everybody knows it. Climate change threatens the ability of engineers to safely and effectively design resilient infrastructure. So design, operation, maintenance, and practices must adapt to considering this life cycle of the infrastructure. And climate change engineering vulnerability assessment can always help in adaptation processes. It's not going, yes. Just a statement that building infrastructure today without a lot of vulnerabilities occur because it will later cause service depression and failure, thus increasing the costs on governments, on private sectors, and even on users. Let me start. So what is PIVC? Our previous presenters, Emmanuel Junju, Mats Eriksson, and Abu Bakr Saleh, they all talked about the climate proofing and the risk assessment. PIVC is a tool derived from the standard risk management.
Sami, please allow me to interrupt you. Can you switch off the video so you will have like a better mic? Thank you. Yes, please proceed. Thank you.
Okay. So the PIVC protocol, as I was saying, it's a risk screening tool. It aligns between the climate events and the infrastructure components. So it's relevant, it provides relevant response to infrastructure to climate. The PIVC is a tool derived from the standard risk management methodologies. It was established in 2005 and was first applied in infrastructure in 2007. Now it's applied for more than 50 vulnerability assessment for infrastructure projects, such as in Canada, Costa Rica, Brazil, Vietnam, qualified professionals, and it requires from those with pertinent local knowledge and experience. Let me just. As my previous presenter, he presented the steps of, so I'm just gonna go through them very quickly. We have 4 or 5 steps of the PIVC protocol. First one is project definition, then you go to the data gathering and sufficiency, After that, you do the risk assessment. If engineering analysis is needed, you apply engineering analysis. If not, you go directly to the conclusions and recommendations. This is professionals for locally BI. We have professionals such as we have climate meteorological scientists, we have engineers and applied scientists, we have professionals in management, and also professionals on operational maintenance from different sectors and different institutions. We had from NILSEC, from NILSAP, from Intro. We also had national experts, and we had some experts from GIZ, Engineer Canada, and Wood. We all sat together from different backgrounds and different professionals, and we opted to use this PIBC assessment. The guideline presented this climate proving climate risk assessment is not just in one stage of the project cycle. It's not just in the, we know that the project cycle starts from the policy and context, then the project planning and identification, then we prepare the project, and then we do the resource mobilization, then the construction, and after that, the operation and maintenance. The climate proofing should not only be on one or two of these stages, it should be throughout the stages. In our case study, we did it actually in the, we did it proofing in a revisit feasibility. Now we're actually doing it in the project preparation for a new project that is commencing right now called the Angololo. So it's not, now we have two case studies, one in the revisit feasibility and now in the actual feasibility that is conducting right now. Just a small background on the Borenga Dam itself. The Borenga Dam is located in the Mara Valley, which is shared between Kenya and Tanzania. It's a multi-purpose project. It's a dam, a reservoir with irrigation, with hydropower generation, and also some 500 hectares of gravity. It has an installed capacity of 2.8 megawatt, and it also has a component of water supply for all the villages and districts in the Serengeti, Butaima, and Tarime. This is just a layout of the project. The project dam itself is here. This is the command area of all the irrigation area. Some is pumped area, some is gravity area, as you can see in the layout. This is the dam layout itself, the dam crest and the components, infrastructure components of the dam that we actually applied the climate risk assessment. These are the features of the dam. Like the height of the dam is 22 meters, the maximum power output is 2.8 megawatt, and other features. All this information can be found, of course, in the NBI website. So because of the time, I'll just go through them quickly. As the previous presenter presented the risk matrix, which is merged between the probability and the consequence. So what we did, we applied the risk assessment in all the infrastructure components of the dam. Probability is likelihood and severity. We applied the 3 tolerance thresholds as low risk, medium risk, and high risk. Low risk, we said no immediate action is necessary. For medium risk, we said action may be required, even engineering analysis may be required. And for high risk, we said immediate action is required for that risk. To get, as you can see here in the presentation, from the probability of occurrence or the likelihood is scaled from 1 to 7. Same is for the consequences or the severity from 1 to 7. But how to get these thresholds or how to get this probability and how to assign each and every component. There are several methods, like method A, as you can see, negligible, remote, often probable, method B, and method C. For this example, we opted to use method B as the probability scale factors. And to do that, we have to have all the components, as you can see here. We have several components of the dam from the physical structure, such as the dam crest, the weirs, the access roads. We also have functional services, such as water supply, irrigation, fisheries, hydropower, transportation, flood mitigation. Also, during the dam, the diversion canal, and also, so we applied the climate risk assessment in each and every component and each and every system. As you can see here, every component has some climate variables that affect that component. For example, temperature. Temperature will affect the SCADA system, will affect the access road, the transmission towers, and even the telemetry and telephone. The hydrological parameters, such as the probable maximum flood, the PMF, will affect all the dam infrastructure components, such as the weir, the dam crest, and during the construction. So it affects the dam infrastructure during the construction period, such as the buffer dam, the diversion channels, the spillway, and etc. A lot of information analysis and a lot of work was done to assign the thresholds of each climate variable. And maybe here my colleague, Dr. Mudassir, can chip in to show us just a summary of the effort that was done for data analysis and data collection and data analysis. The floor is for you, Mudassir.
Thank you very much, Sami. Here, just to explain that also for calculating this risk assessment, which is like the probability times the severity. We calculated like the probability for different periods for the observed historical period from 1973 up to 2008. We also calculated like the probability for two different projected areas, which is around 2050 and also around 2080 by using 14 regional climate models. And here, these are the thresholds that we used in our risk assessment, by putting like some threshold for the high temperature and also for the low temperature. On the same time, like some threshold also for the heavy annual rainfall. And this is the way we calculated our probability here, as Sam indicated. The risk, when you want to calculate it, it's the probability times the severity. Thank you, Sami. The floor is yours. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mudassir. Several methods from 1 to 7. We opted to use method E, which is, as you can see here, very low, moderate loss of capacity, major loss of function. So this is how we designed, selected the severity method for the climate risk assessment. So this is just a summary of the climate risk matrix itself. It gives you just one example. For example, the reservoir itself, it's the component from the infrastructure. We applied the climate or hydrological parameter and the reservoir, such as and from there you can count the risk. Very similar to the others. Generally, as you can see, we had the green results, which are low risk and some medium risks. For from all the infrastructure components, such as the powerhouse, the external power infrastructure, the access road, and each hydrological parameter pertaining that infrastructure component. We had two high-risk results during the construction period, specifically for the coffer dam and the spillway. The other results were generally more or less or hydrological infrastructure identified. 72 out of the 104 were low risk, 30 were in medium risk, and 2 interaction identified at high risk for future consideration. 47 out of the 104 interactions were relevant for future consideration. The conclusion of this one, that the Burenga dam, or the Burenga multipurpose dam, has a capacity to withstand the projected future climate up to 2080. The largest potential impact could be during the construction period, which highlighted as the high risk on the spillway structure. And hamper the construction of the main dam. The recommendations after we did the analysis and the conclusion, we had recommendation for each physical structure. For example, the dam crest, the main recommendation was to incorporate fuse plug in this dam. Also for the spillway, for the powerhouse, we said keep the design as it is. Just consider enough space for the water depending on the topography. And for example, for the functional service, we have to establish an early warning system for flood protection. During the construction dam, we also had the design and for other systems such as telemetry, we have to consider alternative power supply for safety purposes. From the chat, I just added this slide right now because of the chat. I saw that somebody asked about the inclusion of climate service infrastructure in future projects, NBI projects. We actually did that in the case study is the Angololo multipurpose water project. It's shared between Kenya and Uganda. Now it's under the feasibility study. We just concluded the interim report, and 2 months from now, we'll get the feasibility report. One of the tasks in the RFP and the TOR was the task 9. The risk of the climate change impact on the potential damages from future challenging impacts, such as floods, droughts, and etc. to the infrastructure, such as the dam with associated components, irrigation, drainage system, hydraulic extraction, and crops. The consultant should collect the available information, analyze the climate data, such as hydrological data, and evaluate the flood risk in the upstream area consist to new water storage facilities. This is one example of the inclusion of the climate risk assessment in the future projects. I was sorry, I was really fast, but I only had like 10 minutes to do all of this.
Thank you very much, Sami, for this excellent presentation.
Thank you
and
very
here
much.
You gave us like an application of this climate risk assessment protocol, this PIBC, and
Yes.
You illustrated very well this case study of Burenga Dam and how you calculated like this climate risk and the way of calculating. Thank you very much. Please stay with us. I will go now to our next presenter, Dr. Nicholas from GIZ. He will present to us the e-learning course and community of practice on climate proofing and climate services for infrastructure investment at NBI's Climate Proofing Hub. Please, you already introduced yourself, but please kindly introduce yourself again. And the floor is yours, Nicholas. Thank you very much. Yes, Nicholas, you are muted.
Okay, great. Yeah, here I am. Sorry. Can you see my screen already?
Not yet.
No? Okay, then I have to check how it works. Just a minute.
Okay.
Okay. There is some challenge. Just a moment. I try again. Okay, 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay, now it should be there.
Yes.
Yes.
Please put it in the slideshow mode. Thank you.
Exactly. I will do.
Please introduce yourself again.
Okay, I'm Niklas Baumat. I'm an advisor at GIZ in the project, the global project Climate Services for Infrastructure Investments. So we cooperate for some time now, 4 to 5 years already with the NBI on developing also all these products that you have seen today. The guideline, for instance, the application of climate risk assessment. So, and we thought in the past 3 years, so how can we sustain all that knowledge, and how can we use also the pandemic crisis as a vehicle for change to look into how can we manage and sustain all this knowledge using web applications and using knowledge management systems that allow for each and all stakeholders in the Nile Basin to tap on this knowledge and experience and to gather and to join in and to also contribute themselves with getting the question right, how do we integrate climate risks into infrastructure investments? And therefore, I would like to highlight this slide here. I don't know whether it's not coming. Just a moment. Next slide. How do I do it? It's not working, so I need to finish here, but I will show the slides like this. I think you can all see them. It's not in presentation mode but I would like to emphasize that we are establishing now, using the crisis also to establish a NBI new climate service knowledge management hub that tries to integrate the climate services that can be provided by NBI through the activities that we are carrying out, like developing the catalog, developing the climate service action plan, being ready to receive requests for customized climate information, especially for infrastructure investments. As you have seen in the case study, now we need customized climate information representing infrastructure impact thresholds, for instance, climate indices that are not existing to be downloaded somewhere, but where all stakeholders relevant here to produce this information are involved in the process. And so I see a great value in this hub to have more interaction with more stakeholders to carry out such assessments in a much faster and speedy way. And I would like to emphasize also that without understanding where climate information needs to be inserted, we don't know what type of climate information we can provide. So the uptake of climate information, to increase that, to speed that up, we need this kind of climate proofing guidance to showcase where it can happen. But we also need, of course, learning, capacity development to understand this more, because the guideline is a standalone product that will be on the website, which is quite interesting to navigate through and understandable maybe, but I think e-learning, self-paced e-learning can even foster more how to apply this guideline in a more fundamental way. And also increasing the engagement by practitioners in enriching this guideline by sharing best practices, for instance, or identifying consultants who might would like to engage in this topic to receive capacity building or to engage in contracts to do climate proofing, for instance, is a big objective of this climate service knowledge management hub to be established by the end of this year, and also onboarded already experts in the network of the Nile Basin to learn about this hub. So the committee of practice is very crucial to be established, and this seminar can be a starting point also. So all participants who would like to be onboarded, who would like to be registered in this climate proofing hub, in order also to join the series of webinars we are going to have in the next half year to onboard everybody, I think you're most welcome to send an interest here. So what about the climate proofing e-learning course? It should be attached to the guideline, basically to its fundamental structure, but it's also a bit focusing on on folks who are interested in just particular aspects of climate proofing and would not be so interested maybe in reading through the entire guideline. So it could serve both ways. So we have 4 modules very quickly going through. Of course, the introduction is the first module. The second is focusing much more on climate change in water infrastructure in the basin, where we have sub-modules on climate change, climate risk of water infrastructure, climate proofing. So everything that you learned today will be more implemented in this learning course. But then there's also a module on climate services. So how you tap on climate data, what is the concept of climate service? So how, as a user of climate information, how would you engage with climate providers, for instance, to develop a product that is usable? What is the orientation that can be provided here? So the access to data and services, best practices to use climate models, all this can be in module 3 allocated. We are working on this currently. Module 4 is the climate proofing process as such in a very generic way. It's not going into each and every process step of project development. It's too fast, too vast, but we will give, of course, an overview like Emmanuel Junju did for the climate proofing guide, or what it all entails. But we make examples, of course, for risk assessment, risk treatment, and so forth. Okay, so this is related to the e-learning course. It's currently under construction. We believe that by June, we have a first version that can be also tested with the interested public that also would like to engage in a community of practice. And the community of practice here is an important feature, of course, to get this climate proofing hub to life, to bring it to life, to let it be used. And that's why I just scoped out the types of stakeholders that can be included in this community of practice, which is, of course, the Nile Basin stakeholders with its different wings and arms and substructures, but also the Nile text and national stakeholders, but then also project developers in the private sector, infrastructure owners, operators, but also local, regional, and international climate service providers. I think the value chain can be even international if needed. I saw it was good to have a presentation by ICPAC. It would be better maybe to discuss what are the collaboration features, options here to serve better the data needs that are existing in Africa, to close gaps and to collaborate on providing the best available information. But also the private sector is very much appreciated to get on board to provide and provide services in that sense to this climate proofing challenge. And also facilitators, as we have seen in the risk assessment example, you need a lot of stakeholders to get involved. They all need to be brought together. You need facilitators who manage these processes. It's not individuals. It's maybe not the meteorologist, maybe not the engineer. It's maybe somebody who understands process flows and how to steer stakeholder groups for a longer period of time. So these might be also found in the private system. And trainers, of course, that are strongly aligned to these processes, carrying out also face-to-face trainings if necessary, apart next to the e-learning stuff. So this was actually my pledge to say, let's strongly align the climate proofing guideline that is going to go online with a maybe different look, but this is just a mock-up that you can see here, where we integrate e-learning aspects. We integrate manuals that people might like to upload and share, because the guideline is more a prescription how generic steps are to be followed, but manuals on how to do things might need to be embedded and shared also by sharing best practices. And of course, how climate services can be tapped on here, and what is the role of the NBI to deliver that. And that is nicely laid out by Daniel Oponia, also about stating that the NBI would like to engage in developing workflows for climate service delivery, standing operational procedures that manage the demand for such climate services in infrastructure investments. So this is 2 o'clock in Germany now, 2 hours we had this workshop now, it's quite long already. We might not close it directly if you have still time, but I would come to the conclusion that I think we are on a good way to with the NBI together to develop NBI as a climate service hub, and we cordially invite everybody to contribute whichever sector or expertise you're representing. But it's also of utmost importance, I think, to align with the big regional centers and climate information providers, but also the national hydromet services who are providing, of course, the basic information to uptake climate services into risk management and into climate proofing of infrastructure development. Thank you for this last words, and back to you, Mudathir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nicholas, for this excellent presentation about e-learning courses, and also thank you for your support also through GIZ during this process of climate services for infrastructure, in the climate risk assessment, in the PIVC, in developing this climate proofing hub, and in the e-learning. Thank you very much. Maybe we can go now for some questions for our panelists. I hope all of you are there. I have some few questions for you. The first question, it is for Dr. Mats from SIWI. Okay, based on your broad and international experience, can you please tell us what are the most 3 important messages for the MBI? So for the MBI, starting like from the most important messages, what are the most 3 important messages for our region here as MBI?
Thank you for that question.
Nicholas, you can unshare your, you can stop sharing, Nicholas. Okay.
Thank you, Muradir, for that question. I think, well, one thing that I would like to highlight, it's been a lot of wonderful presentations today, and an extremely detailed knowledge on climate risk assessment and so on. And I think one really bottleneck is how do you actually make sure that the information that you collect and analyze and turn into whatever, if it's general information or if it's actually warning for floods and disasters coming along, it has to reach the end user, whoever that end user might be. It might be a farmer in the field, but it can also be a decision maker on a higher level. And I think that's really the chain from getting the information, the data itself on hydrology, metrology, turning that into an information which is actually comprehensive by the target audience. That's a very important point, I think. Then I think also, well, when it comes to disaster preparedness and so on, don't underestimate the importance of early warning systems, particularly for droughts, because I think that's the slow oncoming disaster that have a very big impact, but it's not really until it's over you, then you really understand that, whoa, I should have had a warning of this much earlier. And then I think connect to the local communities is very important. It connects also very close to the natural-based solutions, because local communities are very knowledgeable about the local conditions, and it can help engineers to actually construct the infrastructure in the best way possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your international experience and reflecting that on the Nile Basin region. Thank you very much. Okay, the second question, it is for Junju. You have one question here. It said climate proofing infrastructure involves tapping on uncertainties to improve or retrofit your design. Plus, how are these costs being received by funders or investors as they stand to increase the cost? Any case study where climate proofing of infrastructure has worked in the Nile region? Yes, back to you, Junjo.
Yeah, I can say a little bit about what the driver for climate proofing. I have seen in my review of the studies and guidelines that I have been looking at that a lot of the drive towards climate proofing has been by institutions such as the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, because as key financiers of many projects in developing countries, they are aware that climate risks, if not addressed, will mean that the projects will be less sustainable. So that, in a way, is an advantage. Of course, we are aware that some of these treatments or the way we deal with climate change in specific projects might have a cost implication. And in the guideline, of course, we say that we do not set particular levels of when to decide whether a project should go on. They are the normal matrices, economic matrices we use, like NPV and others, but at the end of the day, the level is usually decided by either the government in question, and the decision is not always only based on the economics of the projects per se, but it could also be other wider implications of having or not having the project, that a project might actually become feasible when you take into consideration all the other factors, socioeconomic factors, even if financially a project may not look very promising. But this is the reason why you put all these stakeholders together in determining whether to go on or not. And also, like the Borenga has, of course, was based on an analysis where you looked at maybe a particular climate scenario and you have made certain conclusions. But the next step for a project like that would be like you have a number of permutations and you look at the different treatments, and then you do some economic analysis and you say whether it makes the project feasible or not. And there will be discussions with the financing agencies to make a conclusion on whether to go on or not. As per the second question, I think that the projects, we haven't really had lots of projects where climate has been really handled in the way that is proposed in these guidelines. I know that having been involved a little bit in large hydropower projects in Uganda before I moved to SWECO, I know that for lots, climate was always an issue, and there was always, when it comes to, it was handled quite generally as an uncertainty, and what will this project look like in 40 years when you're trying to look at cash flow and things like that. So I do not know currently of a project that has been probably assessed based on the current guidelines, apart from the case studies that the Nile Basin initiative is looking at. I think that's all I can say for those two questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Junjo. The third question, it is for our expert from NELSA, Sami. I would like to ask, are you adopting, there is this question, are you adopting this climate proofing guideline at NELSA? You have like some large infrastructure projects at NELSA. So are you adopting or planning to adopt this climate proofing guideline at NELSA? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. As I just, the last slide of my presentation, that the Angololo Dam, it's a dam that is now under the phase of the preparation. And hopefully after that, by 1 or 2 years, we're going to start even the resource mobilization and the construction between the two countries. So this was actually the first one. The precedence was on this Angololo Dam, Angololo multipurpose project. But now we are making sure that each and every project that we are proposing in the future on the pipeline will include this climate service infrastructure. And right now we already for the next project, which is the Akanyaro between Rwanda and Burundi, we already included in the RFP and the TOR this climate service infrastructure or climate. Hello?
Yes, Sami, we have some challenges to hear you, but that is okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the internet is fluctuating, so sorry about that. But just in a summary, we already did it in the Angololo. We're going to propose, and we're proposing to do it in each and every project that we are undertaking. And actually, the financiers are I mean, they really like the idea. Like the African Development Bank actually was really.
Sami, I think again we have some challenges to hear you. Sorry for that.
Sorry.
Yeah, this is always the case sometimes, but it's okay. But we got your answer. You are already implementing that in Angololo, and you have also another project, and you plan also to implement these climate proofing guidelines. Thank you very much for the nice presentation, and also for answering this question. My final question, it is for Dr. Nicholas from the GIZ. Whom do you target by this e-learning course? So here now we have with us in this session many stakeholders from different disciplines. Can you just elaborate? And now you are in the process of developing these free e-learning courses for everyone. So are you targeting like some specific expert here? Elaborate more about that, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for this important question. Basically, we try to design it in a way that it's very broadly applicable to different stakeholder groups. As if it was too specific, then we would not match actually the requirement of climate risk assessment as a multi-stakeholder process. So we remain in some areas of the course program quite broad and looking into the question, how can we raise the awareness and the knowledge, how can we enrich the knowledge base of these stakeholders in a way that it's not too specific, but it's content focused enough so that we are coming together being on the same side page, understanding what the purpose of risk assessment is, what are the basic functions of climate proofing, what is the climate data aspect in this risk assessment, how it should be developed, but not going into very, very detailed technical prescriptions, because I see the complementarity to the e-learning, to the guideline in a way that the guideline can provide a lot of details with the co-production by each stakeholder who's involved in the community of practice, sharing their best practices, their technical detailed descriptions of certain processes. But the proofing guideline, the e-learning is more scoping this entire box of climate services for infrastructure investments. Though there's of course the opportunity to specialize in this course in the future, if others would like to also contribute with their courses, and then we can also say for these kind of target groups, we strongly advise and recommend these types of modules. For more interested technical people, we can recommend these specific types of modules. This is all expandable, of course.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nicholas. Thank you. I would like just to ask the panelists and the presenters to respond to some further question in the Q&A. We don't have time to ask them now, but maybe during the summary and the takeaway message, you can answer those questions in the Q&A. Now I would like please to introduce Ammar Jabir. He is our rapporteur in this session, and he's going to tell us like the summary and the most important takeaway messages for us. Please kindly introduce yourself, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mudathir. My name is Ammar Jabir. I'm the Secretary General of the International Forum of International Meteorological Societies. This is a forum includes the national meteorological societies in the world. I have the honor to be his Secretary General since last year. I would like to express my gratitude and thanks for the organizers and also for the panelists. They did an excellent job. They provide very comprehensive information regarding the climate services in their premises and also the application of the impact of the climate services or climate impact on the water infrastructure, the two parts of the webinar. For the sake of the time, I would like to select just some key messages, from the presentations, and I will provide a comprehensive report at the end of this webinar. The key messages is let us work for the nature, not against it. And I think this is a very useful statement for all of us. We need to work with the nature, for the nature, not against it, as is stated in the webinars. Also, MBI provide a wide spectrum of the services for its client and partners. And I think the countries in the region, they can make use of it, like development of workflow and climate change services, climate change projection, and also the climate change knowledge management hub, and I think the countries, they can make use of all these services. Also, ICBAC is doing an excellent job. They provide very crucial services and information for its member in East Africa. And the most important thing is the seasonal forecast and the capacity building that combine it. And I know that many countries, they are benefited from it. And as they said, Dr. Abubakar, the main challenge is dissemination, and it needs more work with the in the multiple levels, regional, national, and yes, this is need more work. And as he said, they are doing more work to engage with the community and other partners to facilitate and strengthening the dissemination process and mechanism. The climate services for infrastructure, water infrastructure is very crucial, as I stated, and especially the extreme event. Now, we saw some event in East Africa, including the drought and also the floods and flash floods that affected the infrastructure. And there are many protocols that have been applied to anticipate the risks of that can face the infrastructure in the different stages, planning and operation stages. So this protocol should be implemented and also shared to others. Like the lesson learned and also exchange of experience among the region, and also investment in infrastructure resilience as a socio-economic services. Also, this is a very crucial, and also there is a guideline for presented by Emmanuel, and this is very comprehensive guideline. It consists of 4 steps, but each of them elaborated the climate risk and mainstreaming of climate risks in the project cycle. And there is a recommendation for the MBI to include the climate mainstreaming in its project cycles. Also, the comprehensive approach of NBI regarding the climate services exchange and dissemination. And also there's a ecosystem-based adaptation. I think this is looks like the community-based adaptation. This is also it needed much to tackle the risk of climate change. I think there is a lot of key messages to pick from this comprehensive presentation, but I stop here. And as I said, I will provide a very comprehensive report about this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you, Ammar, for this summary and takeaway messages. I would like to thank the participants for this session, for attending this important session. I would like also to invite you tomorrow. Also, we have a session about rainfall and flood forecasting. And after tomorrow, also, we have a session about drought monitoring and forecasting. I'm inviting you also to attend also those important sessions. But thank you all the participants for attending. I would like to thank also our panelists, and I would like to start with Madame Jacqueline, the TAC of Rwanda and the Nile TAC chair. I would like also to thank Juliet from the AFD. I would like to thank also Ms. Rineld from Burundi, the former TAC. I would like to thank Dr. Abu Bakr from ECPAC, our rapporteur, and the one who summarized for us the session, Ammar Jabir. I would like to thank also Daniel Oponia, Dr. Maha. I would like to thank you also, Emmanuel Junjo from Sueco. I would like to thank Dr. Juan Carlos from the GIZ, Leonard Dakwani, and also Nicholas Aza from doing so many things behind the scene. I would like to thank also Dr. Nicholas from the GIZ. And finally, I would like to thank our expert from NELSAP, Sami Hamad. Thank you all for attending this session. And I would like to quote only like one small thing from a previous session. One of the panelists, he said that climate change doesn't know like any borders. So let us continue working together and building resilience and adapt to climate change. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, our moderator. Thank you to our panelists. We wish you all the best. Thank you. It was a good session.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Jacqueline. Thank you.
Thank you, Mudassir. We really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you, Mudassir.
Thank you, Dr. Maha. Thank you.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye, Dr. Mudassir. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, Sami. Thank you.
Thank you, Sami. How are you, Sami?
All is good, Mr. Leonard. Long time.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Junjo and Nicholas.
Yeah, Sami, we will discuss your projects that are ongoing to support you. Let's see.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. It was a good presentation. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Really
Thank
great.
you.